Hi, everybody. I'm Joshua Angeli. I am the main developer and the only solo developer for 11th Hour Hero. And this is my brother, Matthew. We're here. We had a little bit of a hiatus last week. Mostly it was me. I didn't feel very well, so I was like, you know what? Yeah, we could take like 1 week off for this podcast thing, right?
Yeah.
But it's the month of May now. It's May 2nd, I think, right? It's May
Yep.
2nd. Yeah, May 2nd. May the Fourth be with you is coming up, and then also Cinco de Mayo is also coming up as well.
Yep.
I got some big goals for this month, and so um, yeah, I'm really excited to just get back onto the ball for this podcast. And today we're going to be talking about some of the enemy designs I had for 11th Hour Hero. Matthew got to try out some of the enemies last week, and since then I've been working on a few new things and stuff like that. So I could talk about some of the challenges and some of the new stuff, some of the new exciting things that are coming up along the horizon.
Yeah. So let's dig into it a little bit. So you've had some big updates on the game, right? Kind of been on the grind on that. So the biggest change that you have for this build that's on itch right now is that you have a second enemy now, right? Before you had the main boss, kind of
Mm-hmm.
like the flying sandworm, and now you have a new enemy. Could you tell me a little bit about this enemy, and then we can go into both of our experiences playing that build?
Yeah. So the second enemy that you saw, I call it the. I don't really have any specific names for these guys right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think when I start developing more of the lore of the story, kind of thing, right? Like I can actually give it some names. But anyway, so this first enemy I call the zombie android. Basically, it's like this uh android that's like only like half made kind of thing, right? So it's like it's got like a half a face, like half a body. It's like very lanky, very stringy, and basically what it is, I found that model, I bought it for like $8 off of the Unity asset store.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to mixamo.com. They have some free animations there, and they had like this animations for like these zombie things. So like zombie idle for when it's just like standing, and like a zombie walk, and then like a zombie crawl when you're like super far away from the enemy and stuff. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, so I threw those things in together. The challenge, like I wanted to make sure that these things, like these animations, they worked over the network. That was, when I decided to go into this full time. That was still like I'm not much of an animator, right? Like
Yeah.
so I kind of have to rely on like a lot of like free stuff or bot stuff, right? And I just on a multiplayer, so I knew like how to do some of this animations right on the local side, but I didn't really know what it would take to make sure that both the animations would look good for the host and also for the client, and just
Mm-hmm.
like if there was going to be any complications with that. So that was like kind of like the main driver for doing the zombie android thing for the first, like for the second enemy you see technically, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not even sure if it really even fits in lore wise within like the generated level itself. But it was more of like a technical test to
Yeah.
see if it's something that I could like possibly do.
Yeah. And, based off of just looking at it from like a technical test, I thought it was very successful. I played your build, and the things you're talking about of, does it quite match like the vibe or like the lore of the story? All that is like stuff you have in your head, but it's not very like evident, in the build as of right now, right? So I think in terms of that, you can always, either change the lore or, just to like have it include these zombie androids, or, this is just a model for now, right? There's many enemies you plan on having, right? Not everything needs to like whatever fit in a nice box, I think.
Hmm.
So I think there's a lot of this is really like a really good start in something. So yeah, so tell me a little bit more about like the behavior of the enemy. Like now you have the enemy in, that was a big step, right?
Yeah.
What are the different modes you can do, or like how'd you go about like trying to design basically this enemy?
Yeah, so when I saw this model, like the zombie android thing, I was like, okay, so I definitely know I wanted to have it be something like on the creepy, like spooky side of things,
Yeah.
right? Um, and so that's why I'm like, when I was like looking through some animations, I was like, okay, I found these zombie things. I think these would be work well for the technical test. I think in the future, I wonder if I should actually like swap out some of the animations for more like floaty things, because I was thinking more of like a spirit type thing for these like
Okay.
for these like little half made android thingies, right? Like
Hmm.
something more like ethereal kind of thing, right? Um, but I couldn't find anything that was like floating that like actually like looked pretty decent kind of thing. So
Yeah.
one of the challenges with the zombie walk and the zombie crawl right now is that, so there is the animations, which has like its feet moving along, but I'm also using like this nav mesh utility that's built in with Unity, and so you can use that to basically on the fly generate like generate a mesh that the game knows that people can like walk on, like enemies or players or etc. kind of thing, right?
Hmm.
And then you can like basically tell it like, hey, like, well, I want to move to this position. And the utility can tell you whether like that's a good, like, what the path is from one place to that next place is going to be, right? Like what the path is, can even tell you if it's not, if the path is blocked in some way, if you can partially get there or not.
Yeah.
But one of the challenges is that I couldn't really sync up the speed of the nav mesh versus the animation. So what happens is like you have like this zombie kind of like stepping, but the enemy itself will kind of like slide to the end destination. So
Yeah.
that was another challenge I had with this thing, was just making sure that try to pair up the speed so that way it's like not as noticeable. But at the same time, I also wonder if it's like, when you were playing through it, did you notice like any like what was the impact of the like enemy sliding? uh
Yeah. I mean, I think it just it's one of those things where I think the difference was too great between the like its walking motion
mhm,
and its actual movement speed. Because I've seen a lot of games where it's not perfect, the like whatever the walking motion and the walking speed in the actual walking speed, but it's like close enough that it's like whatever, you can like suspend belief or just be like, yeah, it's walking, so what if it's sliding a little bit.
mhm,
The difference though was so much in your like version that it was like, oh, it kind of like breaks the immersion essentially of
mhm.
like, okay, this is not a actual zombie, this is someone coded in a zombie kind of thing,
Yeah, yeah,
which is not what you want. But I know as like, you know you're just trying to make like a test essentially, and you're just trying to test different things out, and you're like, I want the walking speed to be this because this is what feels good. I don't have the right motion speed for it, but that's something that you can like work on later.
mhm,
And I think, it depends. I think some enemies that doesn't need to be matched up super super well. Other enemies, I think it does. So I know one game we've talked about is like the Resident Evil games, the
mhm.
remakes in like 2 and 3.
Yeah,
That game is all about like conserving your ammo, like really landing your shots and avoiding these zombies, right?
mhm,
And you can only get hit so many times before you like have to heal, which you have limited inventory space with, right? So like you
yeah,
really got to conserve ammo and like not get hit a lot. And so part of the difficulty is like how the zombies like sway in
mhm.
that game, and how they have a very unintuitive and like fluctuating like you know sway and walk speed.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's like for a game like that where like that's like the main enemy, there's not really like that many different enemies. It makes like a lot of sense that they spend a lot of time on like that motion
right,
and
yeah,
making sure that feels really good to see and
yeah,
to like try to counter. I think for your game, especially like the genre it is,
yeah,
I don't think every enemy needs to be like that. So I think you just need to find like the sweet spot of like how much effort am I gonna make into like the
yeah,
motion of this one enemy, right? Especially if this is gonna be like the cannon fodder
yeah,
enemy
yeah.
or not, right? It may not be. But I think you'll find that out. and yeah, so
Yeah, I think with the Resident Evil games, I think one of the things that like kind of scares me as a developer is just how like, um, like if you get too close to a zombie, it'll like it'll grab you, it'll like bite you in the neck or in the shoulder, and
yeah,
like
so it's like an animation cutscene almost thing.
yeah, but it's like an animation that involves like two entity like actors thing rather than just one. Like so, like it's already challenging enough to like just set up like a walking speed for like a player or for a zombie kind of thing, right? And making sure that that looks good.
Yeah,
But then like when you have these two like different entity animations thing that then needs to be blended together and have that look really good, like in a lot of like and it's like you like there's the happy path of like okay like both of you are on level standing like on a floor kind of thing, right? And
yeah,
so you can just orient things right to make sure things look good, right? But you could also have it where like you're on a staircase kind of thing, right? Like the zombie could be above you, zombie could be below you, kind of thing,
yeah,
right? And like making sure that all of that stuff looks good, I think is just frightening. As a developer, I'm just like, God, this is a lot of work for something that's like I think ultimately kind of like a little small. It's like definitely the details, but I'm like I can imagine that just making sure that that bite like just looks good.
yeah,
I think probably took a ton of work to actually do to get right.
yeah, yeah. That game is interesting. I mean, they obviously had like a ton of developers working on that, and I think that game is actually very replayable in a sense. It's like almost like a rogue game in a sense because it's like not that long of a campaign, right? But they definitely spent a lot of time on making it like really crisp and stuff like that. And I think for your game, like it's just gonna have to do things differently. It's gonna have to have its strengths in different areas
Mm-hmm.
because yeah, like there's not gonna be a cool like animated death screen.
Yeah.
Like that's if that ever comes in, that's gonna be like way down the line.
Yeah, I still
Um,
haven't really. I think because of adding in these enemies too, this was like also the first time that you could actually die within like these generated levels.
yeah,
So I also had to like code in like, okay, what happens if you die to this enemy? Like, okay, you're gonna like respawn
yeah,
like on in the generated level in the spawn room rather than like go straight to the back to the lobby or like to the boss room kind of thing, right? And there's a couple of edge cases like I still don't even like, I had to figure out okay like I need people to be able to drop their guns and their abilities at the same time like
mm,
when they die, which I think will be good, especially when they fight against the boss and stuff like that. Like it'll be like okay when you respawn now you have to like go and find your stuff and then you can take on the boss kind of thing, right?
yeah,
um but yeah, there was like when adding in this enemy, and we kind of talked about this I think last a couple weeks ago, was that like yeah like I had to there was a lot more work that that needed to do just to make sure that these enemies like uh that like you could satisfy the whole loop of like fighting these enemies, and that
yeah,
includes dying to them essentially.
yeah.
Yeah. I'll say, so right now, when it comes to like, so I think going back to like the behavior of these like zombie enemy guys, right?
Mm,
One of the big things I wanted to do was to have it where like, uh, they have like that idle state where they're like walking around slowly, and then but once they see you, like they don't lose sight of you. They're always going to be chasing you. I wanted to make sure that when you were running away, that like, it's like like these guys are kind of like hard to run away from. So like so when you get like a certain distance away, these guys will actually like double their speed and start crawling, and
yeah,
want to kind of give it like a little bit of a like a scary vibe because I think these models themselves look a little creepy. So I wanted to give them like a little bit of a creepiness like factor to it.
yeah,
And that also I think that is why I think somewhat like the sliding actually, like I agree in that like yeah it kind of breaks the immersion, but at the same time like sometimes when you are running into like the uncanny valley kind of thing, right? I like the uncanny valley is a place you don't want to be in, like and one of the ways that I'm trying to get out of it with these enemies specifically
uh huh,
is to like just not even get close to like having it look realistic. Like I don't like realism is overrated.
Yeah.
I don't think I I don't really have the time or even like I think the specialty kind of thing with the expertise to really get it to like super realism as possible, right? But I also think that you can go a long way with getting it to like I'm still trying to do like best bang for buck kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like is it fun, but is it also like easy to implement kind of thing?
Yeah. And yeah, going into some of the things you're saying, I mean, with the different modes, and you're talking about its cross speed, and you said it doubles their speed from like their whatever like
Yeah.
walking thing. And I actually think it's more than double. I don't know
Yeah,
if it
yeah.
is, but
I don't remember the actual
um,
thing, but it's definitely more than double. Yeah,
yeah, and I actually really like it because I feel like in a lot of games you play, you don't have an enemy that is like as fast or like faster than you, and when
yeah,
these guys crawl, they are like
yeah.
right on your ass,
Yeah.
basically.
They are
Um,
faster than you. Yeah,
and and then, but they don't they have to then stand up and then like do a kind of like a wind up attack.
yeah.
So it's not like even though they're like basically on top of you, doesn't mean they can hit you.
Hmm.
And so, but I really like that idea though because it's like I like getting people nervous about enemies, especially if like their walking speed is deceptively slow. So it's
Yeah,
like, yeah, you're not going to get caught by that, but once they see you, like they're on you, which means you have to kill them if you want to not have to, always be running essentially through every single room for every moment after they see you.
yeah, yeah,
Because you can't break line of sight. Like they're too fast for you to cut a corner and then to like, you know, to lose them.
yeah, yeah.
And I think that's like a just like an interesting enemy to have, and all these things may be tweaked. Maybe a later crawl speed will be like slower or something like that. But you always want to keep your gamers on their toes. You know what I mean? When
Yeah,
they
yeah,
like, you want to give them times that they feel comfortable and like they understand the game.
yeah,
But you don't want to have too much of that because then it gets boring. Like
yeah.
you want them to be like a little bit on edge. There's different ways you can do that. Not everything has to be like a jump scare, right? But
Yeah, yeah. I think there's a little bit of like a push and pull kind of thing, right? Where I
Mhm.
think you like going through some of the Sakurai videos that he has done about like the
yeah,
Super
yeah,
Smash, or just about video game stuff in general, right? You wanna, it's almost like a seesaw. So you wanna like make sure that you like you slowly introduce players to like new challenges, like so you give them something new, give them something that they can overcome a little bit, right? And as soon as they start feeling comfortable with where they are right there, that's when you introduce something like something new, like a new challenge that's just a little bit more difficult, right?
yeah,
And then once they once the players start feeling like that little squeeze kind of thing, that's when you give them like a new tool or give them like a new like thing that they can learn to use, and then you test them on that. Then they like, okay, now they learn something new that can help them overcome this specific challenge, and then now they're like, they're good to go. I feel like in some ways like the Legend of Zelda series, especially like Wind Waker, kind of is like a really it takes that into a very practical example where it's like
yeah.
you're in a dungeon and like halfway through, you're just trying to go around through the dungeon. You might see like a couple like hangings, like I'm just thinking like Dragon Roost Island, like that temple thing where like
Oh,
you
what are these
see,
poles? Yeah,
yeah,
like
what are these poles like, or like, oh no, like I went up the staircase and now it's like gone and stuff like that. Why, like, what do I do now? And then like or like you're just trying to like fight against like one of these big birds that like that's like above you kind of thing, right? You're like,
yeah,
and so like, yeah, so you don't really have a tool to really attack things from far, right? So then they give you like that little like hook, like
grappling hook.
no, it's not even the grappling hook, but it's like that swinging hook thingy, which you can
Yeah,
use to then like grab different poles. You can like grab things from enemies and all that stuff.
yeah,
um so yeah, so I think that's a very practical example, but it doesn't have to really be as explicit as that, right? Like it doesn't always have to be like a new tool or a new weapon. It could literally just be like an upgrade, an ability, like a power up. Could even
Mhm.
be something on the lore side, like on the like story side kind of thing, right?
yeah,
Um, and so I think with the like with this enemy specifically, what I'm actually trying to do now is like these zombie enemies. my idea was that when you're like fighting in the boss arena, right?
Hmm.
Where you actually fighting is like this big like replicator. So like if you've like ever seen like I didn't even realize it's 20 minutes. Oh wait,
No, it's been a
things
good
gone
conversation.
fast. Yeah. So the boss arena, right? You're actually really you're really fighting in like this big like 3D printer essentially. So there's like these
Hmm.
3D printers where like it's like made of sand or like it's a big tub of sand kind of thing. You have this laser thingy that's like shining like lights at specific areas, and then what's doing it's solidifying like the sand or the plastic or whatever
Yeah.
like at these specific points kind of thing, right?
Uh-huh.
And we're like trying to make this like fluid thing into something concrete. So my idea was that the boss like this Leviathan thing is like something that was like just like 3D printed at that point to then like go in and like really like you're trying to stop this machine, you're trying to stop this machine from building the rest of all the bosses and stuff, so that way you stop it from like coming in and just taking over the city kind of thing, right?
Hmm.
So my idea was like these like zombie like android things would actually fit in pretty well with that within that boss arena too, where it's just like okay, like one attack would actually just be like the a laser from the top of the thing comes down, does a bunch of things, and then all these zombies like pop up kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And so the idea is like, yeah, like these guys would be like distracting you essentially, while the big like Leviathan is like really like flying around, like diving in, and like just like coming down and chasing you kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, and so in that way, yeah, like these zombie things are really like they're kind of like fodder a little bit, right? They're gonna be something more like no, they should be like a little bit more distractionary kind of thing than anything, but they
Yeah.
should still be like a threat. And like when they're like a threat alongside with the boss as well, like I think that's gonna make that whole fight like a lot more challenging. Because right now it is kind of like if you just know how to like when to dodge correctly, like I think you can just yeah, it's kind of like just like a waiting game kind of thing, right?
Uh-huh.
But once you have to like manage more than once you're fighting more than just the boss, right? You're fighting all these different enemies and stuff. I think that's where like okay, like some like management of like time, like of effort is gonna like you're gonna need some of that kind of thing, right, for that boss.
Yeah.
And I think introducing something like that will also kind of give me like another good reason to like start adding in like more abilities that players can use to like do like more like crowd control instead of just like doing like raw damage or just like raw like movement stuff to the player itself kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
It's like I kind of like one of my big goals for May is to make sure that I have like 5 different abilities that the player can pick up, or 5 different types of abilities, right?
Uh-huh.
And But I'm still kind of like struggling with like just trying to figure out like what are the abilities that I should actually be adding in kind of thing, right?
Hmm.
And so I'm kind of like taking my own medicine a little bit of like okay, like like building up the game is kind of like a game, and that like okay, like I gotta give myself like an obstacle
Yeah.
I know I'm giving the players, so that way I can figure out okay, what are the tools to give the players to like go and beat all these guys kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think, building out what is the challenge you actually want to make for the gamer is like very important. And I think it could be many different things. And I think you can just take inspiration from a lot of the games that you've played.
Yeah.
Um, so, we can just give a few examples, and because the thing is, not everything's actually going to translate to VR the same. So
Yeah.
I think that's probably the key if you really want to make it fun.
Yeah.
It's like, what is the most like rewarding like challenge that you can overcome in VR without it being annoying,
Yeah.
and that it's like fun to do, and but like hard, like it's
Yeah.
like it's not easy.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of different ways games do it. So I mean, I remember you were playing the Metroid Prime game, the remastered, and I felt like that final boss. It was a big, well, the last two bosses, right?
Mhm.
It was a challenge in like patience, because you have to go through, like, it just takes a long time to get to the health bar, right?
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
got to be patient. You can't like just like you can like, I mean, one of the times you played, like you got him down to like 5% health, and
Yeah,
then you finally like kind of like started
lost
messing
it.
up and then
Yeah,
died, right? But that was like a 10-minute boss fight. It felt like,
yeah.
which can be a little bit annoying, but
And then it was like another like 5 minutes to get back to the boss too.
yeah,
Like the checkpoint was like at the beginning of the level and not at
you still have to do some
like
platforming, and
yeah.
stuff
So
like
that was
that.
like super annoying too.
So there's a lot of different things, right? But I feel like the Metroid Prime, the other big challenge was at that point they've actually given you like so many tools to defeat so many different enemies. And it's like the boss would like show a different color, and you'd have to be like, oh, I need to go to this specific weapon to do damage to him, right?
Yeah.
So it's all about like you have your whole big repertoire of weapons and like types of damage you can do, and you got to be able to shift between all of them, like efficiently and quickly to
Yeah.
be able to like basically output damage, without the boss taking like forever, or for you like messing up eventually and then getting like hit with a bunch of damage, right?
Yeah.
So there's that, and then I played the Resident Evil games, and some of those boss fights, like in Resident Evil 3, is like you're fighting a big bad. I forget what it's called, the Nemesis, but then there's like all these regular zombies kind of
Yeah.
coming in, filtering in towards you. And so that's like the whole thing about spatial awareness, where it's like I have to look up and shoot this thing in this distance, but I
Yeah.
also know a zombie spawned just behind me and he's slowly walking towards me.
Yeah.
So like I'm on a timer, like an internal timer.
Yeah.
And so there's like all of that.
Yeah. It's like the Jets pass rush kind of thing. Wyatt trying to get the
Yeah.
Patriots quarterback.
Yeah. It's like you're seeing ghosts. I mean,
Yeah.
it can be like that. So that's a thing, and then some of that is like mechanics. It's like, oh, okay, I can't be moving when I aim down sights, or I'm not going to be accurate. So I have to literally stop. I have to look up here. I have to wait the quarter second it takes for me to become accurate after I aim down sights. So like that's all like it's like a spatial awareness kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think that may go a little bit better.
Yeah.
For the VR thing, because since you're like in it, truly instead of looking at a screen, I feel like that's like a pretty good level to have. I think the Samus one maybe isn't as good because, and I think especially for now, like you're still building out all these items, but I don't think you want someone to die because they're basically like clicking through a menu and they couldn't get through stuff quick enough. Like that can be a good challenge if you do it right, but I'm not sure if that's like what you want to start with.
Yeah. I don't think any of my abilities is going to be like okay, open this up, all right, tactical nuke kind of thing, and then just
But I also do think it could be fun if, I mean, like, I think your past game, Maritime Arena, did kind of have the VR version of, like, Samus basically having to switch weapons, right? Because you had all these, you had a sword, you had, like, a disc you could throw to do movement, you could have, like, the grenade launcher or just, like, the but it was, like, one is on your hip, one is your arm, one is, it was, like, one, you have a shield, you have a time stop wristwatch, right? And I thought that was kind of cool because it's like, yes, it's kind of hard to remember everything, but like at some point, you could introduce that to this game, and I think that is an appealing way to like fight enemies.
I do think I think there's like a big difference between like some of the things that the player can innately do versus things that players can pick up and learn and like kind of like learn to do kind of thing over time, right? Or earn or buy or etc. kind of thing, right? So I think a lot of the things that were in a Maritime Arena, I actually do eventually want to bring over into this game. And I kind of like at some point, like so I do have my goals for May, and so maybe my goals for June will actually be like, okay, like let's like take a real look at this VR version of it, kind of thing, right, and see which things from a Maritime Arena should come over, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like one of my favorite things about a Maritime Arena was the when you cross your arms, like a shield like comes up in front of you.
Yeah.
And like that felt really good because like you could actually just like move your arms like around as well, and that like actually changes like how the shield actually blocks things around you. And I think but it's also I am still trying to build this game out for like mouse and keyboard, like for a flat screen as well. So it's like okay, like how do I make sure that like that ability, like that flat screen people can also like bring up a shield kind of thing that can also like block shots and stuff like that, right? And then also there's a bunch of edge cases too when it comes to like that crossing the arms and doing that shield thing, right? Which I already know how to fix all that through my first game anyway. So, but yeah, there's like several of those abilities that I think something that the player should innately do versus I think that shield thing could actually be more of like a ability that you pick up. Like you don't actually have a shield like basically when you first get into the game, right?
Yeah.
But like maybe like that's something that you like these abilities right now in the game right now they're just like cubes that you grab kind of thing, right? But
Yeah.
maybe one of the abilities should be just like okay, you pick up this thing and now you have a shield. Like you can just
Hmm.
press the shift button to like bring up the shield if you're on PC or cross your arms if you're in VR kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so that way it's like okay, like maybe that basically turns you into the tank a little bit, right? Where like you can
Hmm.
okay, like if you see a room in these levels kind of thing, right? Like maybe you should go in first with the shield, so that way you can kind of get it like a see if there's like any enemies in there kind of thing, and if you do, you're the ones that like shielding. You're like shielding your teammates kind of thing as you go through. You know.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I think we talked a lot about the enemies and stuff like that. Do you want to wrap us up with anything or anything else you want to say before we sign off?
Yeah, actually, I think this be a pretty good time to mention the goals I have for
Hmm.
May and stuff. So because this was one of those things where I'm like last month was great, but I also was like a little bit lost, honestly. Like I went to GDC and I got to talk to a bunch of people, kind of thing over there, right?
Hmm.
And for the month of April, I was wanted to try out new things. One of them was this podcast, which I think this was a pretty big success. Like coming, like we being able to talk through some of the stuff. Why I
Hmm.
think it's been really great. And I'm assuming right now that the mic still works and stuff. That
Oh,
would
I
be
was just looking at the
yeah.
banner. We're still covering up.
Yeah, and like yeah, okay. So you mentioned the banner. So the yeah, as you've seen throughout this podcast, there's been like a banner that pops up that is a QR code that goes to the Discord that I run. So one of my big goals this month is to get to 100 members in that Discord. And so basically, like I think I've said this multiple times already, but just to reiterate, I want to use this Discord to be able to you kind of get like a gauge of the community, right? Like, what are they expecting? What are some things I can deliver, right?
Mhm.
What like what do people really like, right? And then also just like it's a fun time, right? Just going in, being able to like talk to people about like, hey, here's what I'm building, and and trying to get like and just getting like feedback. It's a good way for like a bunch of people to like come in and like talk about like the things that they want to see as well.
Mhm.
So yeah, I want to get to 100 members. So yeah, scan that QR code and get in there. Um, I was thinking about doing like a plate, like a not like a play testing, but even just like like a weekly like gaming session kind of thing where
Mhm.
I could just like play like other games like Lethal Company or something like that with with people just because.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know I play with you a lot, and I play with a bunch of your friends as well. But I need to start playing with more people than just there's a
Especially
lot.
since we like only a few games basically that are
Yeah.
hard to break into.
Yeah, for sure. And so, yeah, I want to kind of like expand out a little bit in that way. So I think the Discord is a good way to do it. And I think through there, and like what I've been trying to do is just take a look into some analytics stuff too. Why, like,
Mhm.
now that we got this podcast thing, I can actually take a look at like the amount of views and the amount of like people time people are watching this kind of thing, right? And just see like where these podcasts even get recommended to, right? um, on Twitch. Trying to like build up a little bit of a following there as well, kind of thing. Just to like, yeah, it's one of those things where I'm like kind of like trying to build out all these avenues, but I don't really know exactly like what is a good measure. So while I'm still trying to figure out what is good measure, I'm just measuring everything. But yeah, so I do think we're starting off with Discord with 100 members. I think from there things will grow, or at least that's like my hypothesis. Then, but I do think that's like a pretty. I think it's an attainable goal. I think it's a tough one to do as well. But I do think this is something where I'm like, I can probably get 100 people. Like, doesn't even have to be through the podcast or Twitch. It could just be through like friends that I know in like real life as well, kind of thing,
Yeah.
or just like in my physical life, not in the digital life, kind of thing. So, yeah. So so you've seen the banner. Now that you've seen the banner, yeah, definitely scan the QR code and get in the Discord. I'm excited to have you there. The other goals I have: 5 unique boss attacks, 5 abilities that players can pick up, and then 5 staged rooms like within the procedurally generated world, like
Okay.
something where like you walk in there and you can kind of like there's like actual like props in there, like things like you know things actually make sense. It's like not like just like an empty room kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I want to like things to like actually like look cohesive and like actually look like something.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So,
Well, like I
yeah.
said, I think it's like you've built the bones, the framework of these things, but now you need to kind of start making it like really feel like a game.
Yeah.
It's like you have the workings of a game, but it's like okay, start putting these things together now, so then it kind of actually is like okay, I'm really on the spaceship. I'm really going through like these different rooms, fighting
Yeah.
these enemies. Like it feels like real, like really start making it immersive. So I
Yeah.
think those are like really good things to do because, as we've talked about before, it's like this stuff is multiplicative, right?
Yeah.
5 abilities plus 5 different guns plus like 5 different unique rooms, right?
Mhm.
Like that's like a lot of different combinations, and then that's when it's like okay, all this work that you've spent on kind of building this framework so you don't have to like basically make like 100 unique rooms, but
Yeah.
like really like a smaller subset, but then you make a bunch of other unique things
Yeah.
of all these different things and they interact together. That's where like the magic will start happening, and
Yeah, yeah.
you'll know when it's working well because you'll feel it, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I think like you've kind of alluded to this too, but like the playtesting and like the balancing is going to be like a thing too, where like once I do get some of this multiplicative stuff going, like it's going to like the balancing is going to be like start becoming like a little bit more of a challenge. But I feel like that'd be a good challenge to have.
Yeah.
And but like yeah, I do think like trying to like build things depending on feel. At some point, it's kind of gonna like potentially bite myself in the ass a little bit. But either way, so like yeah, these are my goals for May. And then I'm thinking like, so this is like I don't have any sound in the game right now either.
Mhm.
So we already talked about a little bit about the VR stuff, and want to get that working right. The other thing is the sound, like not even like so. There's like music that I should like actually implement in, but like literally no guns have sound, no enemies have sound, and no bosses have sound. So there's like that's gonna be a ton of work, and that's also something that I want to, once I get the 555 in there, then I can really kind of like really figure out like okay how much work is it gonna take to like put the sounds in and maybe even some polish, and that way I can then you have a better way to estimate out like if I add in like a 6th thing or a 7th thing, right, like how long would that actually take specifically, kind of thing,
Mhm.
right? And hopefully with the framework in or with frameworks in there, maybe that won't be as hard, kind of thing, right? It depends on how I actually build all these things, in which I would love to talk about more. But I do think that
We're
that one,
probably out of time.
yeah. I mean, I could talk about hours. Because like, ironically enough, I can tell you about these goals. I'm like, but we've been talking about enemies, and I'm like, I'm definitely not done working on enemies. I'll still be working on
Yeah.
enemies for a good amount of time too. But that's like not really actually directly part of these goals I have either. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think these goals. You said I'm sure you have them written down somewhere. They're not like
Yeah,
all
they're like right
encompassing of
behind you.
all the work you're going to be doing this month. Because you're going to pivot and you need to stay flexible. But either way, I think we're going to wrap up here though. But this was a good talk about the enemies. I'm excited to talk about more of the progress you make on these other goals because I think this game, the progress. I feel like it's ramping up and up.
Yeah.
We'll see if that actually turns out to be true because
Yeah.
that's always a thing where you work on something and it you think you're adding something simple, but then it blows up. But hopefully that happens less and less as you basically have been building out this framework. So you should be able to add things, and hopefully it's not game breaking every single time.
Yeah.
But such is the life of a developer. So, but yeah, well, thank you guys all for joining us. There's a lot of fun. And any last words, Josh? You want to close this out?
I need a catchphrase. To close us out. I don't want to say like blast on or like
Blast on.
or I just like Team Rocket blasts off again. Kind of thing, right? Like, is Nintendo gonna come after me now at this point, or?
I don't think so. All right. Well, thank you guys.
All right. Thank you guys.